Ms. Kay, did you happen to see if that worked or not?
I'm recording, so I don't know if yours started, but I'm recording it.
Okay, perfect. The reason we're recording this meeting tonight is so for families who could not be here, that we're going to have this available on the school website. So hopefully people can get their questions answered that way as well. We're going to share some school information, a day in the life here at Brier, especially during COVID, and then move forward with questions and answers. So in case you're not aware, the first day of school is September 8th for our 1st through 6th graders, okay? Our kindergartners, which I have to say were on campus last week for a few hours a day practicing kindergarten. Our kindergartners' first day is on September the 13th, and they have a delayed start because families get to meet individually with the classroom teachers. Our school hours this year, we are back to normal. Our school hours are 9:20 to 3:50. You'll probably hear me say this more than once, but remember, 9:20, we start, right? So 9:20, we hit the ground running as soon as that bell rings. And so please plan on dropping your student off around, if you're dropping off, around 9:10 in the morning. Give them plenty of time to get in, unless they're having breakfast, in which case they can be here as early as 8:45. We will be serving breakfast in the gym. Now, one of the big questions that families always want to know is class placement. When will I find out who my teacher is? Well, class placement information will be coming out this Friday, okay? This Friday, you will be getting information. An email will come out through School Messenger to let you know, as well as it will be able to access it in your Skyward Family Access account, okay? So that's when you'll find out class placement information. I want to share this visual with you because this is a visual that our team here at Brier really anchors on. And that is the importance of a strong academic program, as well as a strong social emotional learning. We work hard to be strong in both and to make the right proportions, because essentially what we're trying to do is give each of our students the best education that we can, okay? And so you'll hear us talking a lot about social emotional education. You'll hear us talking a lot about academics, but our goal is to hold both of those high expectations in each one, because that's how we believe we'll be able to push and support each student to their fullest, okay? And the pieces in the mixing cup are just ways that we do that, some of our pieces that we use. So a day in your life, in the life of kids, right? So of course we get dropped off or take the bus. Now we will cover busing information here in just a little bit, but if you're dropping off, please aim for 9:10. With COVID, we'll go through this a little bit later with the entry processes as well. Right now, the plan is that I want to open up campus at 9:10 and have kids be able to walk directly into their classrooms, avoiding lining up outside like what we have done in pre-COVID times, okay? But there's also the breakfast piece, which we mentioned. Classrooms will do morning meetings. We've got academics, of course. Then they have their specialist time. So every student has a specialist each day. And the way the week breaks down is that there are 2 PE classes, 2 music classes, and then 1 period of library. Okay, so each day your kid will have one of those. Recess is always what kids ask about. Yes, we have recess. We'll cover that a little bit more. They'll have lunch. And then of course the day flies and it's time to go home. So really one of those pieces that I'm sure is on your mind is, what is life going to be like at Brier during COVID? So let's go ahead and just dive right into that. Just so you know, within the video, within the pictures, there are videos like around mask wearing, so and washing your hands. So if any of that would be helpful for your child, feel free to use this video clips, and we'll put the PowerPoint on the website as well, and you'll have access to those videos. But really, some of our strongest defenses with COVID is our safety processes that we have in place and that we follow, okay? One of those is mask wearing. A question that I get frequently is, so people are supposed to wear masks, but do you reinforce it? And the answer to that is yes. We give, you know how masks slide down, we'll prompt kids to pull that up, right? We expect that our students are wearing masks. Now, there are some students who have significant disabilities that impact their ability to do that. That number is very small, and we have safety plans in place for that. And that's where our zones come into play. We will be running zones this year, which essentially is cohorting our classrooms to a large extent. So for example, at recess, they will be playing in a zone with their classroom. And the reason we're doing that is because of being able to contact trace. If someone would have COVID and be on site and they're part of a classroom, well, then that might impact a classroom, but it doesn't impact the school. And so we are being very conservative in our in how we're handling this. And so we're staying with zones. We also are working hard to maintain distance, right? Right now, the suggested distance is at least 3 feet. We've worked hard to make that happen in classrooms. We're facing forward in the classroom. And lunches, we'll talk more about that, but we're working hard to maintain 3 feet. Now, will we always be 3 feet apart? No. So when we are within close proximity, the goal of that is to be in close proximity for short periods of time, okay? Hand washing is one of our biggest lines of defense, and we will have strong hand washing routines in place, including when the kid arrives into the classroom, they're washing their hands or hand sanitizing, right? That means even before recess. Before recess, we're washing our hands. When we come back from recess, we're washing our hands. Before lunch, after lunch. So really working hard to have those strong processes in place. And the other piece is where this really comes to play, where we need your help, which is if your student is showing symptoms, right? Symptoms that might appear like cold and flu symptoms, and they are not their typical symptoms. So for example, a student is sneezing, but they don't have seasonal allergies, right? Or their throat is sore, or you're noticing their energy change. Please be cautious. Don't send them. Because if they come to school and they have a number of symptoms, if they have a couple of symptoms and they're not symptoms we usually see, we'll be bringing them down to what we call our containment room, and we'll be calling to have them picked up. We have to be careful about containing this. And so part of that means being cautious about symptoms. We reviewed a little bit of this, but some of the common COVID-19 symptoms: headache, sore throat, the loss of smell, of course, is a big one. Temperatures, shortness of breath, the aches, the unusual fatigue. So those are some signs and symptoms that we look for as well on this end as we're making determinations. Another thing, I apologize if this is later in my slides, I can't remember. Between this and staff professional development in the morning, I don't remember which part of the COVID piece is where, but we are offering COVID testing here on site at school for staff and students. So, you know, there may be a time if your student is exhibiting symptoms, we might call you and say, hey, we're seeing this. Do you want us to do this? We would never do it without your permission. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So this is a picture of kind of what a classroom could look like. This is a second grade classroom right here, where you'll see how desks are spaced, and you'll see that kids are would be facing one direction. In the lunchroom, essentially what's a big shift is that most of our students, 1st through 6th graders, will be eating their lunch in their classrooms this year. Because of the spacing distancing required, we cannot fit everyone into the lunchroom and be able to have PE. And so 1st through 6th graders will be eating in the classroom. Kindergarten and our students in our 2 intensive support classrooms will be eating in the lunchroom. And with that, students will be spaced 3 feet apart, facing one direction. And the expectation with masks in the lunchroom, and even when they're eating in the classroom, is that a mask can be off when you're actively eating. But let's say you get up to throw something away, the mask would be on, okay? Or when we're done eating, masks go on. Recesses, I mentioned before, we're running zones just like our students experienced when they were back in hybrid this past school year. The difference is, this is a picture of our zones from last year. The difference this year is that we have to add a zone. So we'll be running 5 zones out at recess. And Ms. K has been actively working hard on getting those zones laid out. And I think we've got a good plan. And so kids will be in their zones, having lots of equipment, but again, remember their zone is their classroom. We also have regular cleaning and disinfecting routines. And so in addition to our regular nightly cleaning, there's going to be cleaning throughout the day, especially high touch areas. So our custodians are well equipped for that. We also have cleaning products in the classrooms. And so think about a situation like, for example, a student receives lap services or even IEP services, and they come to a small group. Those tables will be wiped down in between those uses to again minimize, to work on minimizing exposure, in addition to the hand washing and the mask wearing. Our HVAC systems have been set to maximize the outside air coming in. Filters have been upgraded, or they're at the highest quality that we can get, and our custodians are on point for changing those regularly. There is on our district website the 2021-2022 COVID-19 Health and Safety Handbook. It is also linked in the slides, and so that's updated throughout the year as things change. And so that's just that's a resource for you to have available to you. I'm sad to say that we are limiting access inside of schools. At this time, we're not able to use volunteers on campus. It's closed except for essential business. We are, we pride ourselves in loving to have our families on campus and working in our classrooms, and we hope to get back to that soon, but we're not there right now. Fingers crossed. The vaccine requirement. I've gotten a couple of questions around staff vaccinations. So vaccines are required for all school employees per the governor's orders. Now with that, there could be exceptions for valid medical or religious reasons, and those criteria are set outside of me. And so I know that our HR department is processing that information. That is confidential information. I am not privy to knowing whether or not staff are vaccinated, nor have I gotten sort of reports on how many people. We did get an email just from HR today about showing verification. And so I know that process is in the works, but that's what I know about staff vaccinations at this point. And also vaccines are available to anyone 12 and older at this time. And the Snohomish Health District would be your point of contact for that. COVID testing. We are able to do COVID testing here at Brier. And again, like I said before, we would not test your child without talking with you and getting your permission. School bus information for anyone who kid rides the bus. There are mask wearing processes in place. The last I read, there's also some 3 feet distancing. They're looking at distancing again. The bus stop and route information, you see my fingers are crossed, was supposed to be in Skyward by the 23rd. Oh, Jackie, I see you shaking your head. Excellent, yay. That is a lot earlier than often that they've been able to get that in there. So check out your bus stop route information in your Skyward Family Access. Beautiful.
Donna, can I interrupt real fast?
Yes, please.
Just because I feel this is a very pertinent question. For new families are possibly wondering how they access Skyward.
Yeah, okay. So all new families to Brier, Ms. Croston, our office assistant, is in the process of sending you your Skyward family access information because you have to know your family ID with directions. For existing families, hopefully you remember how to get into your Skyward family access, or you know your ID number. That's the trick. And if you don't know your ID number, then please contact Ms. Croston to get that information. Thank you, Ms. Kay. There's also a new way to access your bus information, and that link is in the slides. So we'll post that on the website either tonight right after this meeting or first thing in the morning. So what is the plan if a child is out with COVID or needs to isolate or quarantine due to possible exposure? Well, right now the plan is that they'll receive some assignments to work on at home during that time period. It looks like my font color got changed, but there's another link in there about some state information around it. If we have to quarantine an entire classroom, we will revert to remote learning. Okay, so we will run classes online like we did last year. So right now, the district plan is that Chromebooks go back and forth every day with students. Now, for kindergarten families or families of some of our younger students, your teacher may have some alternate plans that they share out with you. We do have some concern around our youngest students carrying computers back and forth, just the heaviness of getting used to that. So your teachers will be in contact, but our plan is they will back and forth. And the reason for that is because we really need them to have it in case something happens, right? If there's a possible contamination, or right, you can't always predict that. And so the student having that laptop at home is going to be essential, so we can make sure we can keep learning going as we go along. And all students K-12 are issued a Chromebook. Some exciting news: breakfast and lunch is free for all students. Okay, so as any student who wants to access lunch or breakfast here at school, it is free. We do ask, though, that if your family would happen to qualify for free and reduced lunch, to please go ahead and fill out that form, because that form also helps with other things that you might qualify for. Okay, and so the free and reduced lunch pack form is on our school website, and then also our menu information is available. That we just mentioned. And this is a great opportunity too that I want to just share out, like, things like school supplies or fees that come up. If there's a time that your family or a family that you know of in our school who needs some support, please contact us, right? We have supplies here as backup, and we want to be able to help families. We don't want to have undue expenses when it's a hardship, right? So please, we really invite you to just let us know so we can work with you. And we also keep that information confidential. This is the Skyward piece. It's really helpful for you to know how to use the Skyward Family Access. You can get things like grades. You can update your own family contact information. It's got the bus route information. So lots of important information on there. And a plug for the school district. The Edmond School District is hiring, especially bus drivers and food service workers. So, feel free. We need good people. All right, that's enough of me talking. You know that I would much rather hear from you. So I'm going to stop my share and come back to you. Ms. Kay, what questions do we have in the chat? And please, if questions have come up, put them in the chat so we'll try to answer them for you.
We got a lot of good questions. I tried to answer some that I knew the answers to.
Okay.
But okay, let's see. Wait, you answered that one already. So I think you already talked about this. I was writing questions down, so I apologize if I'm repeating something that was already answered.
No worries.
Is there going to be opt-in COVID testing? And if so, will it be rapid testing?
Well, yes, there is COVID testing for students and for staff. Is it rapid testing? It's quick testing. I can't guarantee how fast. I know it's within the 3 days. I think it's supposed to be on the quicker end of that, but depends on how many they have to test, right? So it will be comparable to whatever else is out there, if not on the shorter end of things.
Okay, and along that same topic, can parents come and be with the child during the COVID testing if it's done at school?
Yeah, just talk with me. Right? Like, we want to make sure this is a process that students feel comfortable and safe about. And if that's the thing, for sure, like, we just need to be able to set it up and make sure that we structure it in a way that we have you come on site in a controlled way, right? Because we have to be careful about people entering the building. But yes, we can make that happen for sure.
Okay, sorry, everyone. I see that people are continuing to
That's
ask
okay.
questions, so I'm gonna probably get behind on that. But okay, so I'm just gonna go with what I wrote down and then we'll backtrack. So
Oh, Camilla, hold on. I
yeah.
saw one more question
Okay.
about testing on there.
Mhm.
Right now, we are not planning on doing random testing, like with people who are asymptomatic. So at this point in time, that is not in the game plan. If that would change, then I will totally let the community share with you as much as possible. Okay. And the quarantine piece that just came in, if a classroom quarantines, it's just the classroom that would go into remote, not the entire school. Okay, next question, Ms. Kay.
Okay, so along that same line of if a student's class has to quarantine, then or they have to switch to remote, will the siblings class also be affected? Since like I think what it's asking is like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think I got it. The only reason a siblings class would be impacted is if upon doing our contact tracing, we think that there would be a risk high enough that that would have contaminated, right? There would be contamination in that classroom as well. Okay, and so that's the whole piece around doing our contact tracing and our zones. So it all depends on who's impacted and how much contact there was. And there's a process for figuring it out. So if one class is quarantined, it does not mean another class would automatically be quarantined because of a sibling. It would rely on a lot of other factors. Great.
Okay, is there going to be band and orchestra this year?
Yes.
That's a very popular question.
There is
So-
band and orchestra this year. They're also planning on offering out the before school practice, I believe. Like, stay tuned for Miss Matson and Mr. Allison. They will share that information. Band and orchestra always takes a little bit of time to get up and running, but that is open to 5th and 6th graders this year at this time. The other thing along that lines is around, there are special COVID procedures in place for band and orchestra, as is in music class. If kids will be singing, there is a special singing mask that we will be using. And that is true also like in the classroom. For those new to Brier, for 5th and 6th graders, that piece is open to all students. So once students are back on campus, then they'll come home with information about band and orchestra. So no worries there. They'll know about it as soon as we get going.
Okay, do 5th graders get new Chromebooks this year? And will they need them on the first day? Will they need Chromebooks on the first day? And how do you get a new Chromebook if you don't have one yet?
Well, okay, whoever asked that question is ahead of me. Yes, there are a couple of grade levels getting some new Chromebooks, and we'll essentially be doing a Chromebook swap. And in all honesty, Miss Ebright and I were scheduled to meet this morning to talk that through, and we got slammed setting up classrooms. And so we tabled that conversation for Friday. So no worries. If there's anything on your end that you need to do with the Chromebook swap, we will communicate that information to you. Mostly it's on our end. They get swapped. And so we just have to get them set up. And we've already started the staging of that. So we'll communicate that to you a little bit later, closer to school starting. I'm impressed somebody knew that. That's good. If you have a Chromebook, a district issued Chromebook, yes, bring that to school with you on the first day. And remember to charge it. Okay.
Okay, along the lines of materials, are there materials that students need to bring other than the lists that I think are posted on the
No,
window? Materials
not,
list, okay.
not at this time, nor do I think there should be anything that would pop up. Well, we make mistakes, right? And sometimes and we forget things, but not that I'm aware of that we would need to ask for at this time.
Okay,
Brian,
oh.
the charger question, if a kid is able to bring the charger, that works. We have a few extra chargers in each classroom, but depending on how many kids remember or don't remember to charge their Chromebooks, those can be in hot commodity. So if a kid is able to bring back the charger back and forth, then great. But if that's too much, I mean, I think about our youngest learners and the weight, then don't worry about it. We have a few, we have some chargers. New students to the district, you will be assigned a Chromebook here at school, so that you don't have to, right now, you don't have to do anything with that. I think that's the Chromebook questions.
Okay, well, sorry, that's a lot. Okay, do we need to space out our backpacks?
So that's one that we're wrestling with right now, because it might be hard to visualize, but essentially like every student who wanted to come back to school, there is a place for them, right? And so based on the number of students in the classroom, then we work to maximize spacing in the classroom, right? And our goal is a minimum of 3 feet. And so it's tight in there. We get rid of all unnecessary items to maximize that safety. Right now, my current thinking is that we will be using the hooks in the hallway for backpacks and things like that, especially in our classrooms where the numbers are larger, and to have backpacks and stuff on the seats would occupy space. And so, whereas in some of our classrooms with lower numbers, they might be able to have their items in the classroom. And with that, by using the hallway hooks, what staff will be talking about tomorrow, when I have them back for their first day, is how do we make sure that we're managing numbers in the hallway and duration in the hallway, right? Because fewer numbers, short duration, with all of our safety protocols, we should be able to run it really safely. And I know a question popped up about the band and orchestra equipment. Odds are the band and orchestra equipment is going to be up in the hallway, up against the side, because again, in our 5th and 6th grade classrooms, there's not a lot of room to store trombones. And so we're just going to have to maximize our space as safely as possible.
Okay, somebody asked with the variant and how unsafe that is, I guess, why is it that we're going to 3 feet instead of 6 feet like last year?
You know, that would be a question for the Snohomish Health District. We're following guidelines from the Snohomish Health District around that piece. And so my guess is that 3 feet with the facing forward, they've deemed, and the mask wearing, that's the realm that they've given us to be able to work with. There is no sort of average number in a classroom. I just saw that one pop through. We have everything from a classroom sitting at 19 to a classroom sitting at 29.
Is there going to be a way for parents to connect with their students' teachers before the first day of school?
Not formally, no. If there's a student where there's an immediate need, for example, let's say there's an IEP or some pressing concern, then when your class placement information is shared, then you'll be able to email that teacher. But because we're not allowed to have in-person events, we're not able to do our meet the staff. And what I'd say is if there's an immediate pressing need that you would need to talk with a teacher, then contact me. And I could also work on facilitating setting that up. But just for general contact, like a meet and greet, we're not able to do that, unfortunately.
Okay, I see this last question that was just asked. A few people asked it. What are the drop-off and pickup procedures?
Yes.
If we can't walk students to class, how do we make sure they get
Sure.
there?
Because Miss K is amazing at signage. And that's only one part of our ball plan, our plan, right? But one, there will be a lot of signage. And remember, the majority of our kids know the campus, right? So that's a big thing. And for any of you new to Brier, it is all hands on deck those first couple of weeks of school. Staff are out. We're directing people to their classes, walking them to their classes. And so we work hard to make sure that our students feel safe and welcomed and valued. And so part of that is making sure that any student who is new to campus knows how to get to their location. Okay, so that's a big piece. Right now, in terms of, for those of you who tend to drop off your students, here's sort of the catch-22. If you're walking students, right now, I don't have to keep people banned at the far end of the parking lots like we did last year. You can walk to the front of the building, but you cannot walk on campus, right? And so I want to avoid setting up those signs as much as possible. But for that to happen, you can come to the front of the building, do the hug and kiss goodbye, right? But then you're going to have to leave campus. And when you do that, you're going to have to make sure you're wearing your masks. Okay? Because that's how we're going to keep kids safe. And you also have to be mindful of your spacing. Those are going to be the important ones. For the drop off in the cars, the other thing is this, right? We want to avoid lining up our kids outside, right? Because there's not going to be a way to maintain spacing. And so 9-10 is when I can open up the campus to allow kids to go directly into the classroom to be automatically supervised by an adult. So for any of you dropping off, plan on not dropping off until 9-10 unless they're here for breakfast or before school band and orchestra once that's up and running. That will help things a lot because then they're just immediately walking to their classroom and we're not gathering in groups. Okay, because the more students who are here before 9-10, the larger the group that happens out front. And then we're going to have to disperse and move people to the far ends of the campus. Okay, so we're trying to balance this need of families and saying goodbye, have a great day, with keeping everybody safe. And so I'm hoping, put it in the chat if I didn't quite capture the drop off, but hopefully we covered that part.
Okay, are we going to take temperatures at the start of school like last year?
No,
Or
I think what you're referring
attestations?
to is the attestation form. We are not doing official attestation forms like we did last year, but we are asking families to do your own informal attestation at home. When your kids wake us up, check them out. How are they feeling? If you want, you can make it a routine of checking for a fever, right? But do your own attestation form. We're not requiring you to put it in the system at this time, right? Anything could change, but if it changes, I will notify you. Heba, I saw your question about choir. Stay tuned. I have a feeling Miss Hume will try to figure out how to pull that off with our special singing masks and outdoors. So keep your fingers crossed, but I have a feeling it will be happening.
Okay, is there an outdoor option for lunch?
No. I mean, so kind of, but not really. So there are no absolutes. Lunch primarily will be in the classroom. If the paraeducator, and they don't even know this yet because I haven't met with them, they don't start until the 7th, but I see Ms. Crater on this call. So heads up, Ms. Crater. If for some reason it would work, the weather is nice, the para who is supervising the classrooms for the particular 2 classrooms that they're supervising, if it works for them to have the kids eat outside and spaced out appropriately, then I'm all for that happening. But I defer to the judgment of my para who's in charge of that to make the call. And they will do it based on safety and based on if it makes sense at that time. But we don't have outside covered areas. And so the best we have is the plan that we've got right now.
Okay, for materials, do students need to bring their materials home every day?
No, teachers, blah, 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 blah. Students will have their own desk space area. So they will have their supplies like that they can store here at school. So the only supplies really that they need to take back and forth is what would naturally come back and forth. That's a good opportunity to, at this time, to say, please do not have your child bring any items from home, such as toys, stuffed animals, games. We need to minimize any outside items and utilize the items at school, okay? So as hard as that is, please don't have your kid bring their stuffy. It can stay, you know, at the end. Oh, I need to pause for interpretation. I'm talking too fast. There's too much happening. So I'm going to try to slow down here. Okay.
Okay, are you ready for another question?
I think so.
We're still waiting. Okay. How many masks do people need to bring to school?
You know, if for masks at school, if you send 2 with your student, that's fine. We have masks here as well. Okay, so if you don't have any to send, we'll make sure they have one. If you think your child is going to go through them really fast and you want to send more than 2, send more than 2. But I would suggest 2.
Is there going to be safety patrol this year? And if so, how do you sign up for that? And will there be a training, et
Great.
cetera?
Yes, I can answer that. Plus, there was a question that came through about masks. The mask piece is around the part of cloth masks are fine. The thing that isn't fine is just having a 1 single layer like bandana or gaiter. It has to be a 2-layer piece. So keep that in mind. So, and we have masks here at school if we see that there's a mask that it's a concern. The piece around safety patrol, yes, there was a call out there for 5th and 6th graders who were interested in safety patrol from Miss Sandy. If there are still students who want to sign up, they just need to get hold of Miss Sandy. She is doing a training the day before school starts. So September the 7th at 3 o'clock. So we're trying to run some things as normal as we can, and safety patrol being one of them. Brian, the Bobcat masks, yes, but I would probably, especially with the variant, I would probably add another layer to it. Like for me, I ended up wearing mine over another one. But that's me. Okay. Okay, next question, Ms. Kay.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a couple at the same time. Is there going to be unicycle club this year? And are the 6th graders doing their camping trip this year?
Well, I have possible happy news and definite sad news. We are not able to do 6th grade camp. Overnight extended trips like that are not allowed. The possible happy news is I have a feeling Mr. Wallace will be doing Unicycle Club because he gets super excited about Unicycle Club. So stay tuned with that. We will also be running Move 60 is the plan. And so there'll be information coming out about that. And for those of you new to Brier, Move 60 is a before school activity exercise program that's sponsored around the district, but our PE teacher, Mr. Wallace, is the one who tends to run it here. Uh-oh, is the time at 2 o'clock? Thanks, Caitlin. I thought it was 3. I will double check with Miss Sandy, but plan on 2 o'clock because your email was most likely the correct time.
And Jonna, for those that are new to the school, who is Miss Sandy and how do they get a hold of her about safety patrol?
Miss Sandy is one of our paraeducators, and you can get hold of her on the district email. And actually, I will put her email in the chat. There we go.
Thank you. Here's about if a student in a class gets sick, how are the rest of the students' families notified about that? And also, how many students in a class need to test positive for a class to shut down?
Okay. So let me start with, repeat the first part of the question for me.
Okay, so it's kind of 2 different questions.
Yeah.
So if someone in class gets sick, how are the rest of the peers' families notified?
Okay, let me start there.
Okay.
So with that one, it depends on the circumstances. If a student got sick over midwinter break, right, other families may not be notified because there would be no chance of possible exposure at school. If there's a chance of possible exposure at school, then I would be notifying the people who need to know, right? So if there's a concern in a classroom, then I would be notifying the classroom. If there would be a different level of concern, I'd notify the people who need to know. The thing that we have to remember is that people's health information is confidential information. And so we've got to balance this need of confidentiality of the individual with the needs of the group to know. And they're often in conflict with one another. Okay. And so I'll be following very tight guidelines, and you can see some of those in that COVID handbook that we try to balance within that piece. So I know that vague answers aren't always popular, but that's the tension that that's the dance that we do on these kinds of topics.
And the second part of that question was how many students in a class need to, I guess, when does a class shut down? Is it if one student or does it have to be several students?
No, I'm trying to remember if it's 2 or 3. So I'm kind of looking. So let's go to the next question, and I'm looking as we go.
Okay. If a student has allergies or something that would make them sneeze a lot, doesn't mean they have COVID. Right. Is there somebody that they need to email to let know about that so we're not quarantining them needlessly?
Yeah, I would say let your classroom teacher know. That's the big one, right? If the classroom teacher knows, then they can let other people who need to know about that. Okay, so that would be the first line.
Okay, if a student has to stay home because they're sick, can families pick up materials, and so that they can stay caught up? And if so, what is the process for that?
The process for that will be most likely that we would have it here in the office. We would arrange a time frame for you to come and pick it up. And it would be either picking it up from in the office or possibly at an outside location right outside the office. But we would work directly with you to make that arrangement.
For students that walk down the back stairs, do they still need to come around the front like they did last year, or can they walk down the back stairs and go straight to their class?
They can walk down the back stairs and come straight to class as long as it's 9:10 or later. Okay, before 9:10, I don't have supervision and they can't get in the building, in which case they would need to come around to the front of the building. So 9:10 or later, come down the back stairs and go directly to class.
Okay, so a follow-up question for the last question about, so if one kid gets sick with COVID in the class during school time, will all the families in the class be notified of possible exposure?
If it meets the criteria for notifying families about it. So again, I have to look at all the variables, but if the way I'm hearing that question is if I know that there's a student in a classroom and they have COVID, right? Then we would be looking at notifying families in that classroom. Okay, because we want to avoid as much exposure or spread as possible.
Okay.
An outbreak is considered 2 or more COVID cases among students or staff. Okay, so that's what we would be looking at in terms of looking at an outbreak, which would then have me looking at quarantine. Like, does that impact the classroom? Okay.
If a student has cold-like symptoms, do they have to have a COVID test before they come back to class? So if a student stays home because they're not well, do they have to have a test before they come back to class?
That will be, so possibly it might help facilitate them coming back to school. If they have symptoms and they're an assumed positive, right? But we don't have a test, we have to assume that they're positive, in which case we would follow the same guidelines for the quarantining of that person, right? Whereas maybe it's a cold and they have a negative COVID test, in which case then we would not have to follow the same processes.
For the after school group, well, somebody just asked, do they keep the same pods and groups for the after school group? And also, if you want to be in the after school group, do you have to sign up for all year? Or is that something you can change your mind about?
Yeah, so Right at School is our before and after school childcare program, and they run their own guidelines. But unless something has changed that I haven't heard of, you don't commit to a whole year. You use the sessions that you want to use. I can't speak to how they're running pods or things, but I could ask Right at School. I know they had a couple of informational meetings, but I could ask them about hosting another informational meeting to help answer those questions now that we're closer to school starting.
Okay, how is the pickup process going to look for school?
Pickup process. Well, we're hoping to be a combination of last year and back to normal. At 3:50, the plan is to dismiss all students to the bus and to the front pickup. We will still run like we did last year, how we had them by teachers, as compared to just in normal times, we have a K2 section, a 3, 4, 5, 6 section, but they're all clumped together. So we will be running where we keep them in their classroom groups and then call them on the radio and move them this way. But we're going to try not to have the delayed release like we had to have last year. That way it will hopefully move the process on a little bit. And remember, if your student is within walking distance, there is no waiting. So they could walk home or ride their bike home, or you could park at the top of 232nd. There are parking spots. You could walk down and get them, and that way you could walk back up. Sometimes there's parking spaces. I see you over there, Mr. Antonich.
Is there going to be, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is there going to be walking group this year?
Don't know yet. For those of you new to Brier, in years past, there have been times when we've been able to have a walking group that's led by a paraeducator on a couple of routes close to school. But I don't know yet if I'll have enough staffing to be able to pull that off with everything that we need to do in terms of supervision. Stay tuned.
Do students need to bring their own headphones?
We have headphones here at school in the classroom. However, some students prefer their own headphones. So you're welcome to have your student bring a pair of headphones if they want, but know that we have headphones here. They're just not always cool and stylish, which for some of our kids, you know, that's not tops on their list, but we do have headphones here.
One question was, are there going to be email or Facebook groups for parents and teachers to contact each other like in the same class, like group emails? And then another question somebody asked was why the teachers aren't doing like a meeting with their families prior to school. Why isn't there a connection meeting before school?
Sure. The reality
starts?
is staffing and being able to have the ability to fund teachers to be able to do that. If we did a half an hour meeting, individual meeting for our classrooms that have 30 students, that's 15 hours of meetings, right? And I actually looked at, would there be a way to combine all of the pieces that I have in order to pay teachers to be there to make it happen? And I couldn't, because we were hoping to be able to pull off something like that. And the reality is that there are a lot of pieces on teachers' time. They come back tomorrow. And with that, we have days of professional development. I get a little bit of time with them. The district has mandatory trainings. There's a lot of mandatory trainings that staff have to have in order to start a year. And so by the time that happens, there's not 15 hours to be able to host, to be able to give people to meet with meetings. That's the real answer. And I wish I had a better one. The goal being that teachers will connect with you in their way and being able to find that time. Connections are important to us. And I know my team will do that in the best way that they can. I would also say if you're feeling that need of here's this piece of really needing to be able to connect with the teacher, then email them and ask to set up a meeting with them, right? And thinking about what that piece would be, because that's you are their partner in learning, right? And so it's okay for you to email and ask for that and for them to be able to try and schedule it accordingly. I do want to honor that it's 8:01, but I want to keep answering your questions. I'm not sure if the interpreters will email me in the chat to let me know if they're available to continue. That would be helpful as well. But I'll keep going as long as you want to keep going so we can make sure we answer these questions. I want you to know what you need to know so that you know we'll start this school year strong.
Okay. Will there be an informative meeting for special education classes before school starts?
If we're talking about our students in IS, then I would expect that, I know that some of the teachers have already been reaching out, but I would expect that the teachers will be reaching out to you if they haven't yet, starting tomorrow.
I didn't really quite understand this question, and I can't remember who asked it, so I apologize. Are there going to be childcare options if a class has to go remote?
No, we do not have options at school to be able to provide childcare if we have to do that. I realize it's a hardship. So we're going to keep all of our safety processes in place to hopefully try to avoid having to shut down a room.
Will there be an in-person curriculum night in September or October?
At this point in time, we are not able to have in-person events. As soon as that frees up, we will look at being able to have things. We're also working to be creative with what can we do on Zoom. So stay tuned. I can't meet with staff in person until the end of October. So all of my staff are going to be on campus tomorrow, and they're going to be in their classrooms Zooming for our professional development. That's how strict that we have to be running these things, right? And so I get it, you all, that it's bummer, right? Of not being able to have these connections. And the whole premise is that we're working to keep our community safe. And so hang in there with us. We will get back to our in-person connections just as fast as we can. And in the meantime, we got to keep staying connected via Zoom. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Do kids 12 and up have to get vaccinated? I think the answer is no.
That's a family
Right.
decision. Yeah.
Okay.
But
And
I know
then
that was Minna, and Minna always asked me good questions.
there were a couple people that asked that,
Oh,
like
really?
grown-ups.
Awesome.
So nice question, Minna.
Nice.
What about assemblies? Will we be having whole school assemblies?
No, again, like we can't keep everybody together, right? And so again, we're gonna let our creative juices flow, right? We had some pretty awesome Zoom assemblies last year. And now that Ms. K is back, we're going to be talking about, okay, how can we get creative? And maybe that means small group pieces, right? So I think I must have some students out there in addition to Minna and Heba. And you guys, I just want you to know, we're going to keep doing our connections and keep bringing in as many of our fun activities together as we can, knowing that right now we've got to stay with our zones and keep that really strong, because what we want to do is get a handle on this so that as time goes on, we can ease back up. Okay. So stick with this. And remember, when you see Ms. K and I, if you have some ideas about ways that we can do that, share them. Okay. Because we like to be creative around here.
Okay. Regarding lunch, will there be a menu so that people can decide what day they want to get hot lunch? And also, how are students going to be getting hot lunch since they're going to be eating in their classrooms?
Great.
Most of them.
Yeah, so the menu is online. So that's a great way to get it. And the link will be in the slideshow, as well as it's on our school website and it's on the district website. So that's a great place to get the menu, and they do it for the month. And the kid can just decide. And when they get to school, they tell what their lunch choice is. And for many of them, sometimes they change their mind or they forget. So we always have a backup of all the different options for students who are eating in the classroom and who want to get hot lunch. It is hot lunch at school. It's not the grab and go meals like it was last year, right? So for kids who want to have hot lunch, we're going to be running it tight, but they're going to walk down to the gym. They're going to get their lunch. They're going to walk back to the classroom, and they're going to eat and still have plenty of time to eat and be out for recess. They'll be dumping their trays in the hallway. So that saves sort of some back and forth. So that's kind of how we're envisioning lunch, and lunch is free this year. Lunch and breakfast is free, even though we do ask that if families think they might qualify for free and reduced lunch, go ahead and fill out the form, even though you don't need it. Lunch times vary based on the grade level. Our K1 and our students in IS have a 30-minute lunch because it takes them longer. It just does. And so our older students, lunch is now boring to them because they're facing forward. There's less of a time to be social. And so they eat much faster and they would rather be out at recess. And so that time is shortened slightly. I don't have my lunch schedule in front of me, but I want to say 25 minutes for lunch and then 30 minutes for their recess. And it's just slightly different for the K1. It's 30-minute lunch and 25-minute recess, something right around there. But don't worry, they still get afternoon recess, so they'll get lots of fun time. And kindergartners usually get a third recess.
Okay, so to clarify, if somebody has cold-like symptoms, parents are required to provide a negative test if they want to come back to school sooner than whatever the CDC guideline quarantine period is.
Yes, because remember, CDC is giving guidelines for the nation. So we have to follow Snohomish County health guidelines, okay? So the guidelines that we are using is off of that direction. And so, yes, if we have unknown symptoms and we don't know if it's COVID or not, and we have symptoms and we have a negative COVID test, then the negative COVID test has a level of safety that we don't have with unknown symptoms. So if we can say, yep, that's a cold, negative COVID test, our mask and our hand washing, that should be fine, right? But if we have unknown symptoms, we have to assume that it's COVID positive, in which case we run it just as if it would be that situation, okay?
Okay, when you said we can't get together until things free up, does that mean when all the kids are vaccinated?
Well, I can't speak to all kids being vaccinated, but what I can speak to is when hospitals are not feeling as stressed out as they are right now, right? And the numbers of COVID positives come down. That's really the piece that we're looking at. It is a family decision about vaccinations. The schools, we don't get to decide that, right? But for us, we have to follow those guidelines, and it really comes down to our healthcare system is being overtaxed right now. I have a friend who works in the health department or in health care, and it's like they're like, don't get in an accident right now, because the hospitals are so taxed that it's putting pressure on that system. And this is a great opportunity for any of our in our community, for any of our healthcare workers out there right now. Thank you, because schools, we feel stressed out. I can't even imagine what it's like working in healthcare. So thank you all for your work. And so that's my plug for healthcare, you guys. We have to do this, and we have to take it easy on our healthcare system. And so vaccinations are your choice. That's all I know about vaccinations.
Are desks going to be together in the classrooms, or will they be separate?
Our desks going to be together. Well, every room looks different. So are there desks that are next to each other? Yes, but there are 2 pocket desks that will have 1 student at them, each sitting on the end that allows them to have 3 feet. And they're facing in one direction. And believe me, Missy Bright and I have gotten our workout this last couple of weeks, moving desks and measuring. I can spot on 3 feet right now. I'm just telling you, right? Because we have moved every room. Every room has a different configuration, and we have all the desks and tables. Like, we ran out of desks, right? We have been pulling tables from rooms, corners of rooms, to be able to use them for desks. And so that's what we have to do, because that's what we do for our kids. So yes, there are tables together, but they're facing one direction and they've got 3 feet. Oh, Miss Kay, you're on mute.
I think that might be all. And I might have missed some, but is there going to be art in action?
Oh, is Misty on the call?
Yeah, she actually said, once volunteers are allowed, I will do everything I can to get art in action up and running.
Poor Misty.
There you go.
Last year, Misty and I were like, can we pull off virtual art in action? And every time something came up and got in our way. But stay tuned, Misty, because as soon as we can get creative, we want to bring it back. And for those of you who are new to Brier, Misty is our art in action volunteer coordinator, just amazing. She comes up with these art projects for once a month, where kids learn a little art history and they get to do the art project. And in times before COVID, all of our kids would run through the classroom and have this experience with her and the volunteers that helped her out. And it's just a really cool thing that Brier does. And so we, again, like, once we're up and running, as soon as we can navigate as bringing as much normalcy back to our kids, we will. And art in action will be tops on that list.
How will school buses be handled? I think I heard you say already that they kind of have their own protocol.
Yeah.
And we have lots of people. Sorry, I'm bogarting your answer. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. But masks will be worn. They'll have distancing on the bus, was the last piece that I read. Last year they had like siblings sit together, right? So having that seat. Last year they also had windows cracked on the bus so that had the airflow. So, and they also had the option of hand sanitizer coming on the bus and off the bus. So those are the ones I know about. I've not heard of anything dramatically different this year.
Okay, one of our interpreters had to go. Kids that walk don't have to line out of pickup. Is there a minimum age grade that kids will be released to walk alone to home? And also somebody asked, can older siblings walk their students to their classes or
To their
their
classes.
siblings?
No, not to their classes, most likely. There'd have to be an exceptional situation for where that can be, because remember, we're keeping kids in zones. So once they're on campus, we want to have them go directly to their classroom, because we have a lot of adults on campus to support kids getting to their place. So if they happen to be in the room across the hall, I'm not going to know if they're walking them to class because they're going in the same direction potentially, right? But so that would be the piece with that. In terms of being able to walk home on their own, that is a family decision. Though I have to say, I'd be nervous if kindergartners were walking home on their own, right? So, but if they're walking with an older sibling and the parent has given that permission, like that's a parent decision. We just ask that, right? Make good decisions for your kids. That's up to you and the responsibility of your family, right? To be able to do that together. Bike riding is the same thing. Are there bike racks? Jackie just knew I was going to mention biking. Yes, there are bike racks right in front of my office. It is I believe there's still a bicycle helmet law for kids. I always get surprised when I'm about bike helmet laws. That's one I feel pretty strongly about. So kids do need to wear helmets if they're riding to school. We also ask that once they enter onto campus, kind of about where the stop signs are, that they walk their bikes, because there are just too many people walking around. We want to keep everybody safe. But yeah, we'd love for kids to ride their bikes if they can do it safely. Number one. How are we doing?
How are we going to do allergies in classrooms, like food allergies, if kids are eating in their classrooms?
Sure, same way, except we would just apply that to having lunch in the classroom. So for example, if there is a student with a peanut allergy in the classroom, then we would be notifying families, and we would not be able to have peanuts in the lunches. School lunches are automatically follow the allergen protocols, so we don't have peanuts in school lunches. So we would be working with families that way. So you would get notification from your teacher.
Will specialists be in their designated rooms?
Yes.
Good.
I'm so excited they're back on campus.
Excited to go to the library.
Yes, we're excited. And you get to check out books. Yes. Just for families, because adults will want to know this. When books are, so for kids to pick out books, they'll be washing their hands. They'll get to pick out their book, check out their book. When a book is returned, the books are quarantined for 24 hours before they are then redistributed. So there is a quarantining process for our books. And the same will be true in the classroom libraries as well.
Did I miss anyone's questions? I don't. Oh, are there going to be after school sports? No, right?
Yeah.
Through the school.
Maybe unicycle club, but stay tuned for that. How will lunch in the class look like? Minna, I'm not sure what you're asking. It'll be like if you bring your lunch, you're going to sit at your desk and have the lunch. The same as if kids are getting lunch from the gym, they'd come down to the gym, walk back to the classroom, like sit at the desk and eat, or potentially outside if that worked for the paraeducator. Masks off when eating, but then masks back on, just like we did in the cafeteria before when eating is done. And then putting the trash and stuff, right? We'll have bins set up in the hallway, kind of like we would do for a special event when we ate in the classrooms. So that's what lunch in the classroom would look like. You're welcome. School supplies. so there's the school supply list, but then there will be individual school supplies turned into, so plan on most school supplies being individual, right? And then it's kept here. There may be some shared items in a classroom, like let's say manipulatives. We're doing math, we're working with manipulatives. Then we would have a cleaning process after that, but plan on the majority of school supplies being individualized. I know it's hard to have kids in zones, but right now we have to run the zones. Do we have to? No, there are some schools that are running, they are mixing at recess because that's what they have to do based on their numbers and their schedule. And what happens then is that if there is an outbreak, they have a lot more possibility of shutting down more classrooms or the school in terms of needing to quarantine. And so at Brier, I've made the decision that we are running it safe. We are being in zones. And the downside of that is that there's not the blending right now of classrooms. But the goal being that that we have to weigh out the safety piece as compared to that. So as soon as we can start mixing groups at recess, we will. Yeah, Chromebooks back and forth every day, unless your teacher tells you a plan about keep them home until they need them in the classroom. The goal being that the Chromebooks will be at home if we need to shut down a classroom. Emergency kits, we do ask that you send an emergency kit with your student. What we do is we store those in a big bin. And that way, if we ever have a situation where we need to keep kids for an extended period of time, then having those emergency supplies just enables us to do that a little bit better. And if there are any financial challenges for emergency kits, let us know and we will help out with that, okay? I know, okay, so Blake, that's what I thought. I looked at Snohomish County one time without the helmets, and I'm not gonna like shout that from the rooftops. I was afraid of that, but make your kid wear a helmet when they ride to school. Just saying, because I'll ask them where their helmet is. I was a bike rider. I rode my bike to work every day for 10 years before I started this job. And I gotta tell you, the number of close calls with cars not watching is scary stuff. And so wear the helmets. That's my
We have a
soapbox.
question about snow days.
Oh no, what was the question?
Oh, no snow days. Thinking ahead, no snow days will switch to remote for weather issues.
I don't know, but I have to tell you, my prediction has been no more snow days. And then I get in trouble every time I say no more snow days. So here's my next prediction. My next prediction is that maybe we'll have like a half a day of snow day. So people get to play in the snow and get it out of their system. And then, or maybe a day, because that'll allow teachers to also move to a remote format and then be up and running. But I don't actually get to make those decisions. But I, for one, say no more snow days and have more summer days. But some people don't agree with me. So stay on that one. All right, final questions. I do want to make sure that we get your questions answered, that you come back to school feeling as confident as possible. And I also want to honor that it's 8:23. And so you might not want to, you may be done hanging out with me for the evening. All right. I'm going to take that as people are done. So I'm going to hang out here until the last person clicks off. So if you have a question, I am here. But I do just want to say thank you. Thank you for turning up tonight. Thank you for asking your questions. Really and truly, we're putting our best thinking into this. And if your feedback, your questions helps us think through things. And please just know that our priority is keeping our kids safe and then getting them educated, right? And so everything we do, we're trying to do through that lens, okay? And we are so ready to have them back on campus. All right, you all, have a great night. Thank you.
Bye.